mandated to file proper reports every year to the People's House on what you do with village money. So all of Tobago could see what you do in Charlotteville and judge if you're making sense or you're not making sense and tell you what to change. Let me add a couple of provisions for fairness and inclusion and stuff. You need to have provisions for fairness in the allocations across the villages. So what you need to do is mandate the THA that not later than say March 15 every year, they must publish for everybody in Tobago to know the criteria that they are using for the distribution of development investment among the youth. Right now they don't have to publish nothing for everything, they just do. You must require them to publish the criteria before they pass anything in the House. And secondly, they must publish the criteria that allows them that allows you to understand why they increase or why they reduce the development spending in the communities. So if this year they said, we as THA with our share of the money that remains in our hands, this the 85% that will remain as their money, they still have to spend it around Tobago with the capital budget. They must come and explain to you why no money is allocated to fix the double end of the road. That is the kind of good governance that will get development into it for you. And the other thing is that you need the THA to be bound by the law that requires them to design and distribute the investments among the villages fairly. That must be required, and that must be done consistent with the knowledge of the development needs of the various villages. So if you have depressed areas, what do they need? Flourishing areas, what do they need? Allocate to fit. They mustn't just do anything because I'm power, my party will do what I like. They must act on the basis of a change in the law that mandates proper procedures. And then there is the provision for inclusiveness in the governance arrangements. If you're going to reorganize Tobago so that you can achieve development, government has to become inclusive. When the government prepares its budget priorities every year, it must be required by law to hold public hearings across Tobago where any resident and every resident who wants to participate can come, look at the proposals they have and pronounce on them before they get to the House to pass anything. That's the first thing. They must be able to express their opinions as to the service needs and the capital needs of Tobago. And finally, you could set a date on that, not later than March of every year. The famous People's House that we are agreeing to go for must hold the hearings on the programs of the THA in every village on its priorities, budget priorities, on its development plan, and on the status of the capital projects that were approved and the expenditure program that was approved in the previous year and in the previous 5 years and so on, so that the villagers are able to monitor what's happening to their money, which they generate out of their development efforts for the THA to spend, to see if it's spent wisely. Against that background, you understand that the proposal that I'm bringing to you on how to integrate Tobago's communities, village communities into the development process, emphasize the need for significant changes in the current arrangements and practices that we have, emphasize the need for us to focus our attention in Tobago on an industrialized tourism, emphasize the need for institutional development that will facilitate public participation, public monitoring, and public control of the actions of the Executive Council. And all of those proposals have one striking element. They place the fundamental wisdom of every one of you. That is the way you're going to fix Tobago and get Tobago ready to participate in the national development effort. That is, it has long been underway in China, and out of which we've been executing for 133 years. So that would be my evaluation of the story. I mean, thank you, Mr. Brown. Good one.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Vanus. Give him a round of applause. This was strong medicine, not for the lighthearted. If we're talking about change and wanting change in Tobago, we must realize that it's going to take some work, and it's going to take some revolutionary thinking and some revolutionary actions. All right? We can't just continue moving along the way we are. And Dr. Vanus rolled out some very, very powerful points. This kind of conversation has to continue. And questions. Right, let's get some questions. Anyone has some questions they want to ask?
I've actually worked in the public service is that last year this division asked for $10,000 for this project. This year we added 10% to the $10,000 and we put that back in, where there is no real analysis of what worked last year, what didn't work, and so we now know we needed 20,000 instead of 10. That kind of analysis does not happen, and I have personally seen that does not happen. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons I decided to get into politics, because it does not make sense. I have seen what they do, and it simply doesn't make sense.
Okay, there are a couple of agencies they go to the Chamber of Commerce and the hospital, the tourism, but they're actually this agency, I think, the way they call it. And they also talk to the people who finance politics. And those are the people who influence the budget here as well as in Canada. So there will be no organized consultation with Charlotteville people, Speakside people, and so on. They go where they. That's what it's the same thing I see in Jamaica. This is a Caribbean disease. With governments think they own the country and you don't own it, so they're not working for you. You working for them. So all I have to do you have to change if you want to make sure you fix the situation we have there.
I listened as attentive as I could, and a couple of things struck me. One of them was that to accelerate the development in communities, one of the things we have to do is to enhance the skill sets that exist. You made references to several communities and several activities that suggested that the skill sets exist in those communities. But you also gave us a certainty that because of the environment in which they exist, most of the persons with whom the skill sets exist leave. And I was wondering whether there's a way that we can monetize the leaving of the people. Because we have a significant challenge in doing anything else. We have sadly, over the existence of the country from all I would have read that took place before I was born, the philosophy, like you said, that the people who sit in positions of power think that they own the country, so they do not have an obligation to take seriously anything that comes from people. Case in point, more than 10 years ago when I worked at the Tobago Emergency Management Agency, because almost every island in the Caribbean asked us to help them develop what we did in Tobago, we sat and wrote an entire proposal to the teaching, suggesting that we don't have funding activities a particular way. We could have allowed for Tobago to become basically the trade destination, talking about education and tourism. So you have people come and we load components in for transport, for hotel, for all that kind of thing. Now this is more than 10 years ago and it was shut down. It seems as though we have never been able to elect people into governance who think that the people that elected them have any value. And if that doesn't change, then nothing that you said there is going to change. Because the resistance we're having with being able to define Tobago but not define Trinidad and removing media line, because Texas is only Trinidad. We are facing that in Tobago as well. And if we cannot change the environment through governance structure, then we may well have to consider some way of monetizing the fact that people have to leave those communities to the benefit of the community.
Yeah, this is an old proposal across the Caribbean where this program exists as well. And the only way that I have ever seen generate meaningful outcomes is not monetizing of those who leave. It's through the remittances they send back to support family from abroad. That's fundamentally what I see. Any other thrust for development has to come from the fact that you have in the communities. People seeing where the world is going, seeing the fact that they need to change what they've been doing over the decades, understanding what type of change that they need to pursue, fighting for it within the national space, fighting for it within the legal system. If you don't have people who are willing to fight, I remember I always tell my friend development is about people, and it's developed by the type of people we have, and the type of people we have. And if we are not willing to fight for development, and we rather make peace and accept our condition, we will go nowhere. So I don't agree that we won't change. I've seen a lot of changes in the island, but it's slow. It's very
real change to what you mentioned, because if we continue at this rate, when the rest of the world is moving like less fast than we are always going to be this condition, even if we change that.
But we can change. I mean, change is not something that happens at a very rapid pace. From time to time it happens in fits and starts. Once in a while you have a big bounce, and then it slows down. So when we were young, we had the revolution to deal with racism. And that was a massive change, and then where we are today, it's petered out. So social change is not like engineering change. It takes time. But the key to it is this kind of conversation. It's dialogue and the discussion and the continuous learning and the infusion of new types of people into the society. Like what you have 50,000, 100,000 Venezuelans come, something like that. Things happen in the world that bounce you. It's a slow process.
Good evening, everyone. My only disappointment is that I see a village of civil people. I come here tonight, and this kind of discussion needed more participation in order to influence the kind of change that I think really the presentation deserves. But Vanus has indicated that by small bits and pieces, you will get there. But I'm hoping that this information can get out to the other villagers so that they can be enlightened in terms of the prospect of participation, the prospect of development, the prospect of how do you change the village into becoming an industrialized tourism product or program. I think that is what is required here now. For this message to get out into the village so that the whole village can be engaged in the kind of development that is discussed and presented today.
could start to share if you want that.
Yeah. Good night. Till now. Till next month, we'll be in a different capacity down the road, and we're going to invite Dr. James to present the same happening in the community down the road next month.
That's interesting.
When you're coming, as I said, the copy with the gas, not gas.
The maps.
That one, I'd like to get a copy.
I could give me an email. I could send it to you. And we're doing an update, so you get your paper. When I was a child, my mother used to say, where 2 or 3 are gathered, you make progress.
Good scripture.
It is that is good scripture at the value. Don't you?
Yes.
So you
good scripture. Good scripture.
Like good scripture. Yeah, you just keep going. You never know. It took near 500 years of the Dark Ages in Europe. And when I was a child, that's 1,000 years after Roman colonization, British people were still saying if you can't learn Latin, you can't think. When I was in high school, they used to say that. And it was in my generation that we ended the reign of Latin as a language in the schools, including in Britain. 1,000 years of Roman colonization. We had 300 years of the worst kind of slavery. So it takes time for the people to acquire the self-confidence to speak. It takes time for Charlotteville people to come to grips with the fact that we cannot continue to have one man own up the whole village. So that's what I understood from a child. And when I raised it with my father and those people, and Bondin and them, my father said, Williams should shoot me in the buttock. Because I said, we have to take away these lands and let Charlotteville be born. Bondin answer was, you're right, but your father has eyes like a swordfish. He will be sitting down on the bottom. So this is our own debate. So change is a slow process. We'll make it though. We're not going to what is it? Yeah.
Okay, but I listened to this discussion. There are some things that there are some things that I took particular notes of. That is the thing about the village organizing and governing itself. But within the village itself, within this present government structure that we have, do you think that they are ready for, or they are willing, are they willing to grant this kind of possibility for villagers or villages to do their own kind of governance? Do you think the government as is prepared for this? I can answer my question. I don't think so. Because the records will show that they prefer to give you, they prefer to feed you, they prefer to give you fish rather than to teach you the fish. This is what I have applied from this particular system that we have. Because they seem to want to run things for you and not to run things for yourself. I don't know if you have seen this and what you think about it.
I think the reason these questions were posed and I was asked to come and do the lecture is because you are right. There is no tendency in the society, among the politicians, to act as though they vote for you rather than you work for them, that you are their boss. Say, but I will ask Brother Mam to give an answer to your question. Brother Mam, what do you think?
Special good night to everyone. I want to start by congratulating Brother Vanus for a very keen lecture on the things we are facing in Tobago. But there are some myths that really need to clear up, because when you talk about the people's house, and we come back and we still talk about the village council, we really create some contrast here that we can't cope with. Because while the village council had its time, just like the Westminster system, it has outlived its time too. Because I can remember we were once in Tobago thinking about putting together not a village council, but a management council in the community that would foster the things of the community. For instance, we talk about a bed up there, the double bed. If it's come out, it directly would be done by that entity. But what we have here now is just a football by the THA that we just not seen away with. So I do hope that everything we want to understand that regardless of what the Trinidad play with what we're trying to get as an autonomy, or they didn't play with it, or we're satisfied or not satisfied with it, we all have to be regimented and equally stand up for what we believe Tobago should be at the end of the day. I thank you and do hope that in good spirit we will do what is best for this island. And I thank Brother James again for such a healthy lecture. Thank you.
Thomas, we are listen. You are one of the wise men of life.
I would like to find out part of your main topic, Tobago problem. In a development, we need people, as it rightly mentioned so many times, but we as a people, we need to get together to stand as one. And that is something that we are very far from. We need to stand up, one for another. Make sure we sit and discuss what is required as one people. And when we see we go in that, Chila said, you're going to invite you another time. I would like to see much more people come and listen to what was said there tonight, because the amount of information that was given, I was shocked when I came and I saw a few people and I learned about it accidentally. So I want to emphasize that point. As a people, we need to get together and we need to stand as one.
How do you do what Thomas is saying? How do you get Charlotteville people? I love every Charlotteville person, but how do you get Charlotteville people to love one another that way? And so, do what Thomas is asking. How do you get people to love each other? You are not teaching that.
This gentleman made a very good point, because it's difficult. I was telling my sister here just now, it's difficult to get people together. I invited a lot of people to this meeting, and when I check there, I see about 6 people from Charlotteville here in this meeting, and that's a shame. They are not together. We need to get together, and it's a long time I've been saying that we need a change of attitude towards life generally, not just in Charlotteville, in Tobago.
How do you get people to love one another? You are Charlotteville. How do you get it? This is the important question.
Yes, I want to first congratulate Dr. James on his presentation tonight. I came here not expecting the kind of information that came out here. I am of the view that, in fact, the gentleman who was talking over there just now, he said that people are not taking responsibility for the, in other words, they employ the politicians and they are not making the politicians recognize that they are employees and not their employers. And I think that is a key to what Dr. Jim was saying here. And this is something that we must recognize, get politicians to account for their stewardship, and get them to do the work that we require in the community. Again, I feel honored to be a part of your presentation. I'm happy to hear what you are doing. When I was telling you, well, yeah, now that we should form a political party.
Let me see if I can get here. What we need to contribute and then we wrap up with that.
Okay, I'm not from Charlotteville, so I'm just listening. I'm listening to the discussion, and I'm just wondering, politicians are accustomed to doing things based on our history. This is the way they know how to do it. They get into office and they plan how to spend money. We, the community, just normally depend on the politician. Can we not think of doing a shift in, for example, Charlotteville? What is the plan Charlotteville have for Charlotteville? Write down that plan. Financially look at the plan, prepare a budget. You are under a certain division. Present your budget to that division. Follow it up to say, this is what we want for the development of Charlotteville. Also live in other villages. Asking them, listen, you know what your village wants. Prepare budget and start submitting, because politicians don't know how to do what they have to do. So they would just follow the normal pattern. Can we not do a mind shift and shift the way in which we will do things instead of just waiting on the politician? Let us now take it to them and say, this is what we want.
Let's get the process started.
Yeah.
Just let me say, you could attest to what I say. Now, under the Tobago Development, PRDI, Policy Research and Development Institutes, they have done that before. Did the document, Dr. could explain that because you have done that before. Explain it to every community how much this budget will cost, and this is the budget to run Charlotteville, to run schools. And they have done that before. It's in documented form. Under the Policy Research and Development Institute, they have done that. It's in documented form.
Bring them in line to say, hey, there was a different plan,
Let me just wrap up with the observation. I remember what Taylor said. We did it. We went to every community. And before we went, I proposed this same conversation in every community. Before we went, but your Charles took me a bet. He said, I bet you that at the end of all these meetings, people will say, you have the PhD, you come and help us with it. We can't do it for ourselves. And at the end of the process, I lost the bet. Because every community said that. Which is why I'm proposing that what we have to do is establish a program of education in the communities, empower, change the rules, change the law, and so on. It's a long story. Development is a long process, but there is the wisdom and the courage. I believe in the people of Seville, and I believe in the people of Tobago. I think we'll get there. Yes, yes? So let me thank you all for coming out.
What I want to say is that the Trinidad and Tobago government is a member of the United Nations, and therefore we have a target date that we are supposed to meet, which is 2030, to get things right, where we work towards the sustainable development goals that have been outlined by the United Nations. And we are signatories to that, and it involves getting communities to to move forward and to embrace the sustainable development goals that we have set ourselves or we have embraced. Right? So, but this is part of it, and persons need to get on board.
The heart of even those sustainable development goals is that the people themselves must get up and take charge of their societies and not leave it up to, as the lady was saying, leave it up to the politicians.
All right, so again, thanks everyone for coming out. And before I give you a vote of thanks, I kept hearing some sad comments. Oh, nobody came out. Don't worry about that. This is the first lecture. One of the goals of the lecture is to stimulate the villagers to do it again. Right? When we went to Lansformy and we did the lecture on cancer, lifestyle diseases, a few people came out and they stayed all night because the information they were getting, just like the information they're getting now, was of such importance to them, and they asked a lot of questions. And one of the things they asked is, can you come back and do this again? So they want this done again, and you want this done again. The leaders, the communities have already had it planned out. Or when you move down the road, you say, right, you're going to have Dr. Vanus James come back and roll this up. We're bringing this lecture to one accord in May. So the conversation has started here. A little fire has been lit. You keep it going. So when you go into the community, you talk about what you heard here today, what your thoughts are. Right? And you let people know that, yeah, you should have been there. you missed some great information. This is information that this man stands before the United Nations and gives this kind of lecture. And you got it here for free. Because he cares about us, he cares about Charlotteville, he cares about Tobago. So it's up to you now to go and spread the message. And let's move quickly on getting him back here again so that the conversation doesn't die out. Alright? So first, of course, giving thanks to the Most High, known by many names. We know there's only one. Gratitude to our ancestors and whose shoulders we stand. We want to thank Dr. Vanus James for taking the time out to deliver this brilliant lecture to us, and also for sponsoring the refreshments. All right? We also want to thank the Village Council, the Charlotteville Village Council, Mr. Dexter Wilson, Dexter Hackett in particular as the Village Council President. Also in particular Mr. Arcturus Brown Sr., who is instrumental in working with us in putting this together. Also Mr. Couturier Perry, who did the invocation for us. And thank you, the audience, for coming out and listening, asking questions. Enjoy the